How long was it, son?
Hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey hey ya ya hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya 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 hey ha yo hey yo hey yo Fort Beck Community College Ukiebino yo me too gashi dagu shana yogi no yo yo wata pepe agi ktabi ihaji ya bino hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya yo hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha yo hey yo Fort Beck Community College Ukiebino yo yo me too dagu yogi no yo yo wata pepe agi tabi ihaji ya hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya yo hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha hey yo hey yo Fort Beck Community College Ukiebino yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi no yo yo wata pepe agi tabi ihaji ya bino hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya yo hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ha hey yo hey yo Fort Beck Community College Ukiebino yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi no yo yo wata pepe agi tabi ihaji ya bino hey yo
Oh, mitakuepi. Yushke wanchian kampi. Chantewashtea Yohana Page Yuzapido. Elijah Hopkins Demie, Ake Wana Wakchinja Wakpa Wunspe Wankantuya. Dechia Dayan Yahripido mitakuepi. Hello, relatives, again, and welcome to the This Was podcast. I'm Elijah Hopkins. We're streaming at you live from Fort Peck Community College on this beautiful Thursday afternoon, June 3rd, 2021. Thank you again for joining us, relatives. And with our weekly Buffalo Chasers podcast, as a reminder, we're trying to address issues related to mental health, have a good, healthy conversation, joined by two awesome elder relatives here. Mr. Earl Bullhead and Mr. Tommy Christian are both in the house. So look forward to another interesting discussion today with these gentlemen. But before we get started on the topic, and I do have a few announcements again, ask Dekshi Earl if you would share a prayer with us in a good way, if you are able.
I just put my dentures in my mouth. I just got back from the clinic. I just put dentures in my mouth so that they're not sticking yet. El capo.
Oh.
Hold on.
Holy smokes, you brighten up the picture with that shirt, man. New cap. Holy smokes.
I'm getting ready.
Tawana.
How?
Yes.
Oh, chica.
Oh, mitake. Le wochika. Maship chahel. Yo tela makena. Kakukuka. Oleha I blufchak. Okashkela etkaya. O yawankti. Shewakya wakagi.
Oh.
At Hokashila. I can't bet the Wakaya Kopila, Nila Wopit Hankacha. At the Wakahisha, Kushich Babish, Maza typic Taunkish, Akichita Oprapin there. Oyato Kit Hapina. Waki Wachek and Nicha. And I was there. Shina Wuchik and Ona and Aukia. And at Akuku was tested welcome. Akuku है कोना थोड़ थोड़ा है प्रजुत इच्छा है चाहे मुशिक चाहे वो याकब चाहे न कोई है वो पिला थका थका शलमान ले ना यहाँ पे तो गला rituals गानी चप की है ना ये ला मुशिक चाहे वो याकब चाहे वो चिक थक ना होना है ना वो किया है ना थका शला तो आके ना को ना आखिर Shaku, Ukomane Kinachchi Yapshmir, Enkol Othana, Ekpa Zoyatash, Ushiach Chihina, Umanik Techa, Yutila Kumte. Sayoet Hokashila, Ekhate Topata Tuakuka, Uye na Wuchika Etka, Kaya Vaki. Yutila He, Techia Lakshi, Euyakabna, Takuka. Yukcha yuha uyakabena nach una kisha wa unshula pie sitaku gap hepki wastekter so he hokashila et khate topa hoye uyaktena hoye woche ka ekhaki nach una kokia pie sat hokashila tuake hena wexishni atash hena ushikti hena Uchiket Havana Kunachon. Nanako Okana Kit Havna Uchi Kit Havkena. Asia Ankle Hena Uchiket Hav Kazap Kinachon okay. And Achitaku Nachini Umshni Hena and ankle Le Wakawa Hanki Opomani Ptiki Hena ankle Elisha Ubna. Pasteste Wayanka, the Sahet Hokashima. Oh, Edka, Buchika, Kaga, Ushiokia here. Oh, Mitaki Ase.
Oh, hey,
Namayado, Dekshi, beautiful prayer. Relatives, just a few announcements here. Every week we try to give away some items in a drawing. We have a FPCC jacket and a Kindle Fire tablet up for dibs here. And so for the week 35, so we're in week 36 now. So last week's drawing winners for an FPCC jacket is none other than Miss Margaret Campbell. Winner, chicken dinner.
Dr. Margaret Campbell.
Yeah.
Dr. Margaret Campbell. Also, we have a Kindle Fire up for dibs, and the winner for that for the week 35 drawing is Jennifer Owens. Winner, chicken dinner. Right on. Congratulations to the winners. You can redeem those prizes at Student Services, the War Eagle Vision Building in Poplar on main campus. If you are unable to retrieve those items, I know Dr. Margaret Campbell is over in Havre, I believe, but get a hold of us. We can mail that out to you. We just need a destination, a P.O. box to mail it out to. So call 406-768-6370 and ask them about those items. And so same thing with the Kindle Fire, Jennifer. If you're not local, if you're on vacay, if you're down south someplace, just give them a call. So those are the main things as far as announcements for drawing winners. So I'll turn it over to you, Dekshi. Tommy, I'm sure you and Uncle Earl discussed some topics. So we're all ears, gentlemen.
Hechi tuolla dai chanu toshka. Mitaki epi ushimalo kchewi chasha mielo. Ambe tukile mi chante eto agalake nahana pe chuza pelo. Hecha jemi ta wamnisha ge doba imachiapi. Ushimalo omakia naha agnagupta. All my relatives, and again, we'd like to welcome you here to our podcast, our Buffalo Chasers podcast, something that's somewhat of interest to some people, not all, but at the same time, we try to always appreciate those that are looking on and watching us and just observing, but that's good. And again, give us a like, give us a share, something like that. We'd really appreciate that as it relates to those algorithms. Jeez, I'm kind of learning all of this technical stuff from Toshka Elijah. He's helping us understand all that good stuff. All right, but again, can you hear me all right, Toshka?
Oh, we hear you good.
Okay, good. You know, we've been talking about, and again, just to kind of stay in context with the basis of this character development, we thought it might be important to understand that. How would you say? How this is going to work for you as an individual? How it can help you develop a healthy lifestyle. We chose Ani. That's how we refer to it as. And you know, there's stages of life. There's milestones that we achieve. This first stage we refer to as Wankayaja. The second stage for the boys is Hokshila. The girls is Winchinchala. The third stage for the boys would be Koshka, and the third stage for the girls would be Wikoshka. The fourth stage for the boys is Wicha. Now remember that, Wicha. I'm not trying to say raccoon, I'm trying to say man, Wicha. There's a story that goes along with the rest of that. And then for the girls, it would be from that point, from Koshka, Wikoshka, they would go into Wia. And again, from Wia, for the girls, they would go to Winukchala, as it relates to a blossoming or a flower. And the men would go from Wicha to Wichasha, with the SA on the back, to Wichakchala. It's an elderly person, an elderly man that we hold dear to our hearts. That's what that means. That carries that wisdom. But there's stages there. And the reason why I wanted you to remember Wicha, because I strongly, as I observe our societies and stuff like that, each of those stages that you aspire to, or not aspire to, that you go into naturally, there's an opportunity for learning there. And you learn as a baby from your mom, your grandmas, your aunties, mostly generally women will bring up that first portion. When you get about 4 or 5, when you become Hokshila, then they kind of turn you over to the men, the uncles, and not necessarily the dad, but the dad would protect you from the uncle so he don't beat the hell out of you because you don't listen. But the dad would kind of take you around and let his brothers and of course grandpas kind of bring you along in that stage as Hochschila. And then at that stage, you're still hitting women. They're still fighting them. And there's really doesn't no too much difference in size. You're pretty close to the same size. And then from Hochschila, you go to Koshka. Well, at the stage of Koshka, you quit hitting them. And you start recognizing, hey, there's something there. Oh man, I don't want to hit them. I want to hug them now. I want to hold their hand. You start learning about that attraction that you have for your the female people that you like, that looks good to you, or maybe treat you well or something. And as long as it's not a relative, not your cousin, please. But and so as a Koshka, you start learning how to deal with your emotions in a good way with an attitude of respect. And that'll all be taught to you as you go along. And then from Koshka, you go to Wicha. I think that's really important for us to understand. And I don't mean raccoon because people will translate Wicha as raccoon, but I'm addressing that stage of a man when I'm referring to a man. And during that stage, you learn how to become a responsible parent because you recognize the true meaning of life is procreation. And then in that Wicha stage, you begin to mature beyond Koshka. You begin to mature and take on responsibilities in your life. And one of the main ones is to provide and protect your family. And so in Wicha stage, you learn how to do that. And then from Wicha, in order to ascend to Wichasha, to get that SA on the end of Wicha, you have had to done something honorable or dignified for the sake of the family, not of you, of the family name you carry. And then you acquire that status of Wichasha. And then from Wichasha, you go to Wichakshala. That's an elderly man that carries this wisdom that we hold dear to our hearts. That's what Wichakshala means. Now, I think, and this is just from my observation, this is my personal perspective, is I think the Wicha stage of our growth was taken out deliberately by systems, whatever that is, residential school or public school or whatever. Because if you ever notice, a lot of our Indian men go from Koshka right into Wichasha, eh? And so they never learned about that stage of becoming responsible for the family. So they go right from Koshka to Wichasha. And then the reason why that creates a problem is many of them are referred to as Wichasha and never have done nothing in their life to bring forward dignity and honor to the family. So, long ago, how the young Indian men would bring that honor and dignity to the family or to the name that they carried would be they would join the army. They would join the services, eh? Because back then it stated that Indians, if you believe you were indigenous to the Turtle Island, you didn't have to fight no wars for the government. But they did in spite of that because they didn't want to kill anything or do that, but they wanted to bring dignity and honor to the family name by providing service for the sake of freedom. You see how that works? And you see the ones that never did that, they are referred to as Wichasha, and they still act Inktomi-like, They haven't had that stage of Wicha learning to help them understand the responsibilities that they carry, and not only to themselves, but to their family, their tribe, and and their community. And so there's a stage that was taken out from, maybe it was intentional, I don't know, I can't say, but I always felt that. So, and in that, we realized that Like, for an example, you see a lot of our Indian men, and let me tell you, a lot of it is a learned behavior, hey, the antisocial behaviorisms, the dysfunction that they're experiencing. But I think this stage where they haven't learned about responsibility, when they go right from Koshka to Vichasha, it affects their behavior as childlike. Koshka, when you're that age, you're still experimenting, finding out how things are, adventurous and all that good stuff. You do this, you do that. But unless you learn about responsibility in that Vicha stage, and they refer to as Vichasha because of your age, then hey, and you haven't learned that, then I think that creates a problem, and that has created a problem because you see them still running around, not no responsibility, no discipline or nothing, and getting drunk all the time, doing drugs and all. See, that's that part of that learned behavior that they just let us. Oh, you Indians, that's what you do. And they patronize us. They pat us on the head. And, oh, that's what Indians do. So go sleep all day and do this, do that. Attitude of a noble savage, eh? And see, and we let that happen because we didn't understand that stage that was probably the key. And first and foremost, as it relates to the men, on how to be responsible as a protector and a provider of our family. And that was left out. That's my thought. Now, that could be controversial. That could be contentious as it relates to some people, because they get cognitive dissonance as it relates to their societies and their tribe and whatnot. But at the same time, I'm speaking in general terms. They need to understand overall. Look at our Indian people. Look how people look at us. Do they look at us with dignity and honor? Nope. Even with our warriors, the ones that have gone to war and fought for this freedom, they're dissipating. They're going by the wayside. And are we holding them in high regard? They used to make songs about them all the time. Now they're making songs about is powwow dancers. Think about it. Wachi we chashapi, wachi we api, and they're singing about them instead of our warriors. So, there's a transition that was made, and that's why I say this COVID might have been a godsend for us, because we were leaving too much behind in this fast-paced world. Something needed to slow us down and kind of even inaji po mitaki, stop, eh? Because again, that's what I see what was happening. Now we can recognize and talk about these things. But what I would like is Chie Nietzsche Ole to have some input there and share with me what he thinks about that stage of Vicha, going right from Koshka to Vichasha. I think there's a void there that we need to fill in respects to that character development and how that helps us. So just a thought, brother. What do you think?
When you reflect upon the word you use as to transcend, that reminds me of how times were when we didn't know, but we needed help in understanding what was happening to us as young men. So a lot of us at our age, we did not come to this crossroads until we got out of high school. Now these days, they start dealing with it at the freshman, sophomore age. And so my biggest, concern was how do we reach the young kids to understand that character development is starting in them a lot earlier in their life.
Yeah.
They're mimicking so many other behaviors that they're, dealt with obstacles that have no understanding of. Like when you shared the significance of our stages of life, I, for myself, I was very lucky and very fortunate that I learned how to listen And I think that's the key. We can concentrate on getting kids to listen. And I think we need to focus and practice what kind of techniques can we develop to get these kids to listen. And so when we think about that, you know, one of the things that we as Native Americans, Oyate Gena, and it involves all of us, is that we relate to sound, we relate to motion, and relate to color. For example, when I used to hear my Uncle Joe blow a whistle on a drum, I used to get goosebumps. And as years passed by, I learned that there was 7 original whistle carriers that started that society back in the day. Well, nowadays, it seems like it's a movie now. I was walking through United Tribes Powwow, getting something for the kids, and my brother said, Iwatcha, that's you, so I went over there, and there was a guy setting up cameras. He was giving instructions to these people that were taking, you know, footage, video, or whatever they're using, cameras with lights, and gave him instructions. And then when it came to the end of the song, the lights came on, cameras went on him. He went kuchala towards the drum, and he blew his whistle. And my brother and I thought to ourselves, Duale, what's happening here, man? And they allowed that to happen at United Tribes. I won't tell you who it was, but I saw that as a beginning of what was becoming a change that we need to educate others. That there is no society in Bismarck. There's no Kolaki yet.
No.
And so each one of those representatives that are representing their community, then they are the ones that have to step up and explain these things. And that's not happening. Instead, they get up and they donate. This is part of who we are. And they explain where they got the whistle. But they never mention what society it is.
Yeah.
It's always taken from an individual. It could be a veteran, it could be an elderly man, but there's never a whistle society designated. Did you ever notice that?
Yeah, I did. Oh, actually.
So in our lifetime, what we're seeing and what we've learned, we have to find ways in which to integrate that. And this is a good path. What we are doing is that people get to understand how important that is. And on several occasions, I've bumped heads with friends of mine who have difference of opinions about eagle bones being blown at powwows. That's not the place for them. They have their place. And the attitude is, no one can stop my whistle. If I want to blow it, I'm going to blow it. And it goes back to the same repetitive thing. Never, ever mention what society or who gave it to them as a community.
Yeah.
And I can truthfully say I witnessed it one time, and it was a very honorable experience. They actually told the public, the community, what was going to transpire here. Is there anybody here that's going to object to this gentleman representing our community, our people, and carrying and being a whistle carrier?
Yeah.
You got 5 minutes. Nobody stood up. Nobody said nothing. They hit the drum and they sang and they brought him up. But I have never, ever seen him ever do that again, anywhere. And if he has, I never heard.
Yeah.
Right? And now we've lost him. He was an educator. Spoke his language. Very well-known individual. A lot of respect. We lost him to COVID. And so now we have younger ones, generations that come out of the clear blue sky and start initiating. And so when we see those things, I for myself reflect back to how difficult and how hard that road is, that choice to make. And this is after high school. What am I going to be? Where am I going to go? What's going to take place now? You're of age, right? Time to move on. Go be a man. And I go back to what you just said, becoming a koshkalaka.
Yeah.
And I go back to think about those days, it was always full of sports. It was always full of something that was competitive.
Mhm.
My brother, we were running around. He was told to, he said, "I'm talking to Aphaking." He said, "I can't walk up here, hell, it's Kuchela, young Schnell, don't run around in the house."
Yeah.
Didn't listen. Back in them days, the tables all made with corners on it.
Yeah.
It was really rare to see a round table. So he kept it up and boom. Not that he put a knot in his head. You could see it coming up, big old knot. And he was about ready to cry. And my dad said, "Che Shneo. Che Shneo." He said, "Nila Kotakshta." He said, "You're a cowboy. Don't you cry. You tough it out. This world is a tough place. You tough it out." And so we grew up with that competitive attitude. And then there was many of us that went through that. And hence, in the growing up area, boarding school and all that kind of stuff, we were kind of more or less, whether it was intentional or not, we were geared up to stick up for ourselves. We had the attitude that if you're pushed and you're stuck in a corner, don't hesitate. You fight back. And so those periods, that transition we're making from that imprinting at an early age, we skipped all over all that learning. No one told us anything more. And so we went through a life of not knowing exactly those values, those teachings. And when it was after school, that when we were put into a situation where we had to think about the life in general, and we had to figure out how to retain this and how do I get someplace? And there's intervention. Out of the clear blue sky, people would start saying things to us. "Awangalaka, take good care of yourself." He said, "Othala yufcha, think in a good way." He said, "Okola teacher, yeah, find some good friends. The things you're doing, it's not right." Little tidbits, little informations in the language that helped that transition as a young man. And then from then on, the next was dealing with alcohol and understanding what it was. So you start learning the terminology. Mini pija, boiling water. Mini shot, red water. Mini wakan, whiskey. So that terminology is becoming part of your vernacular, your vocabulary. And it was kind of cool. People said, they said, "Let's chip in and get some mini wakan." But the word mini wakan stayed in the language, but the English led up to that. But we understood what he was talking about. He said, "Mini pija." So let's get some mini pija. So the language term stayed as beer, but the English was dominating our language. So the transitions and all that, we have to say, all right, how long is it going to take, or what direction it's going to go? And so many of us left the rest, off to school someplace, colleges, universities, cities. I've been there. I went through that whole gamut. And so in the process, life's experiences, I've heard and saw many things. And so learning about identity and individuality comes with life itself. I walked into a pool hall coming from school, after school. I walked in to get a cool drink, and somebody way in the corner, didn't see me at first. How gosh, it's Nila Khatalo. I looked over, and here's this guy sitting there. He was from Pine Ridge. How did he know I was Lakota? Is it the way I looked? Or did he address those on his language first before he spoke English? So I went over and sat down with him, talked to them, visited. So he was way out in California where you would never expect it. There's another Lakota sitting in there. That always surprised me. Was that coincidence? Was that synchronicity? And so in the learning process, we too have to realize how young do we have to expose these values to our kids. We do the best that we can. We use terminology. Basically, the way things are, most of it is English. You can say hechushni, duenishni, iyukana, ishtima, but that world of conversation is dwindling. And so I, for myself, really think that, and somebody suggested it, we need to, at one time, do a broadcast, if at all possible, all in Lakota or Dakota. So maybe somebody on your side can do it in Lakota to give our people that are tuning in an opportunity to actually experience what a conversation is about. And I've seen it. In Canada, there are people doing that. Back in about maybe 15, 16 years ago, there was a lady that came, got my attention. First time I ever got a big hug from a stranger. She was the chairman of the Willard tribe. She approached me and gave me a big hug. She's a big woman, man. Anyway, they put a bowl out on the middle of the table, made a circle, and they would speak nothing but Lakota. They had to donate to that pot out there, and they use that for their meal for the next meeting. You know, I thought that was pretty cool. And what they did was they took my recording of Spirit of Song and they went through and evaluated the whole thing, talked about every song that was in there. And they said, there's one word that you used in there that I didn't understand. I said, she said, you said to be alcohol and drug free. And the word is wa'iksami. Wa'iksami. I was taught that from my aunt. She said, I asked her one day, she said, wa'iksami. You know, to be free of exterior things that go into bad stuff. Wa'iksami, be aware. You know, because you can understand. And all of us can say that, except for these younger ones are cool guys that never touch booze. That identity whole changes. Your whole character changes when you take that, what we call holy water, whiskey. So many of us at my age went through that transition into becoming who we are, had to come to that realization that we have to learn how to listen. No matter what is being said or done, we need to listen and decipher what we can benefit from it. And they may have difference of opinion and all this, but at least we're listening to what's transpiring. We develop a good skill in listening. And it's getting more difficult all the time because our pronunciations and our words are not as clear as the way it was when we were grew up in a language continually spoken Lakota. Even the pronunciations are a little different. So you have to say, we learn how to do that. It says, he said, "Not I didn't hear you in a good way. Could you repeat that word again?" And so you learn a lot of words by learning how to reflect to the what's being said, and so get clarity on those words. So being a good listener is how do we get these kids to listen? I've experienced here in my home, my grandkids, they have a tendency to spend more time on their games. And so I encourage them, I say, you need to start increasing your vocabulary. And so I throw words at them and I'd say, what does it mean? What does the calendar year mean? Or what is, specific words dealing with, how do you call it, integrated circuit, things like that. They play the games, they're involved in it, recreational, some of it, a lot of it's educational, but when it comes back to the conversations that you have and trying to get them to do things, you get confused. You don't know the terminology, you don't know the definition of the word, the language they were raised on, English. So when you speak Lakota to them and then give them definitions, that's how they learn.
Yep.
I said, you can either call me Okana, or you can call me Lala, or you can call me Konkashila. You make a choice when you call me. So most of the kids in my family call me Lala. Term of endearment. The la part is endearment, but to double it up and say Lala, that even adds more to the how would you call it, the love and the sincerity of the word. So la is always used in that context. Very beautiful, how do we call it, part of our language that. Lala, just the ring of it, it just sounds awesome to be called that.
Yep.
So in my experience, it's always a daily chore. And when you watch television and you really listen hard to some of these movies, it's entertaining, but at the same time, a lot of these Western movies, they have actually butchered Kabbalah or language terms,
Yeah.
Wakantanka,
Wanking tanka.
tanka, she. Anyway, so going back and kids say that, they come to school and they say, Mr. Bullitt, I learned a new word. I said, well, is that? I said, what is it? It's a word for buffalo. What is it? Tatanka. I said, oh. Listen closely. It's Tatanka.
Oh.
Tatanka. And so it's Wakan, not Wakan.
Wakan.
So it's always a teaching experience. And it's not only with kids, it's these people are learning our language. Some of them are really proficient at it. Some of them are good at it. A lot of these ones that I met from Germany, they talk better Lakota than me.
Remember that time at
you get
Bismarck?
surprised,
Remember that time at Bismarck, that German guy couldn't speak English, but he could speak Lakota, and I called you over here. Earl, come here. Talk. Yeah.
Talk to me. And it's surprising how many people out there are like that. I ran into a nun. Little glasses on. I got a habit on. I came around the island at shopping and I ran into her because in a big hurry. I didn't know she was there. I almost ran over.
Yeah.
Ma, she said. She said. Or La, she said.
Yeah.
She said, you almost ran over me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chuma. I looked at her, and I walked by her. I was just totally in shock to seeing this little nun talking in Lakota.
Oh.
Because you got to remember at one time in South Dakota, that whole area's newspaper was written in Dakota.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of people because they needed to learn that language to communicate for all the various things that they needed, trade items, land dealings, and greetings and stuff. So they took it upon themselves to learn how to say those things. Like Masopia. Masopia is a store, but the only reason why they call it Masopia is to be able to communicate on a thing they call telephone. It doesn't mean a phone, it means a store, but they interpret it as being a telephone.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't get off the subject, but I'm on a, they gave me some stuff at the hospital, so I might be talking goofy. It has codeine in it. Oxycodone. But anyway, so I'll just kind of refresh your memory. They call up to Fort Peck for the X-ray results when I bit the dust.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't say re-ride because it knocked me out. Anyway, so everything is healing up pretty good, except that's what they gave me to ease more pain. So 6 days now, and I'm still in pain.
Yeah.
So back in the day, third day or so, I'd be good enough to work, you know. But you get older, it takes a long time. Oh, that reminds me. When you talk about that transition of becoming a Ikolshkalaka and then becoming a Vichasha. You start thinking about that, and you're going into the final stage of, you know, Chachtala. Well, hell, I stayed 39 years old for 6 years.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get old. I don't want to. See, you said that last year. I'm telling the truth. He said, that was last year. I said, no, I'm still 39. Oh, there's a nice straight face to him. Just because I didn't want to get old. I didn't want the responsibility of being old.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And now that I understand it, I appreciate it now. And I'm happy to be elderly.
But you see, Chie, that whole venue that we used to use, prime example, the owl dance. What was it?
Yep.
Yeah. And we don't do that no more. Because again, like the aunties will go speak about their nieces, the uncles go speak about their nephews, and then they'd get their buddies to come out. We don't acknowledge that achievement or that growth that our young people are experiencing, and then that deters them, or we don't acknowledge them. We don't give them a man's name, Giabado. You know, you have a little boy name, right? But then when you go beyond and want to become a Wichasha, then you should acquire a man's name. Does that make sense, Chie?
Oh yeah, they do that because of the personal development and what they've done for the community.
Yeah. See, acknowledging acknowledging that growth. That's we don't have that, and I think that's why I say the greatest tool of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed, and we followed that whole oppressive sort of a behaviorism, which they call colonialization. But again, we know how to take care of these things, and we just push them aside. Well, we need to kind of help ourselves understand from a contemporary perspective, because now we have this ability to communicate a lot quicker and a lot better through social media and whatnot, that these things can be done. And then we can also stress that, you know, like the doctoring ceremony, the wiping of the tears, the naming ceremony, those all need to be done at home, not at the powwow.
Exactly.
You see? Yeah, but the reason they're doing them at the gatherings, at the powwow, because they don't know no better. But if we shared with them what's appropriate, then they'll do it there. They think just because it's an Indian doings that they can do these things. No. You can do them at the powwow if you do them back in your tent, eh? You
Yeah.
know, but
There are people are doing that,
yeah,
which is good.
and then they
Really
could
good.
feed right there, whoever they
Yeah.
want to feed, and that's. But the ones that put it out in front and exploit it, virtual signaling, I'm an Indian. Please don't do that. That's kind of not very respectful for the sake of the powwow committee and all the work they put forward and all that good stuff. But if they want to sponsor something in honor of that name or this action or something like that, see, the point that I'm making is we know how to do it. We just don't do it. That's why I say that we need to slow down. We're leaving too much behind, trying to keep up. Well, what are we trying to keep up with? Especially living on the res, our way of life is very slow. I'd say I could recognize it if you lived in a city where you have to hustle to keep up and to pay your bills and get gas. But when you live on the res, you have an opportunity and time to kind of slow down, take your time, learn how to listen, like what you were saying. Understand the importance of that wisdom that's being conveyed or shared with you is important, not to the individual talking, but the individual that's receiving it based on their ability to listen. And see, we know how to do that, but nobody is doing it anymore. Oh, I know. How many times do you hear that? And my dad educated me early. He said, no, well, if you know so damn much, you do it then. Oh, no. you do it. Well, I thought you said you knew. I said, and he said, the better thing to say is I understand. Oh, had you do that. What was you going to say, Chie?
I know when I first came down to the home res here, that's the first thing I noticed. I know. What do they know? No matter what you say, I know. I said, gee, that don't fit right. That don't work. Well, it's true just about everywhere.
Yeah.
The areas I've been, one of them is Bird Jakes. The other one, Oshtiks, that's another one.
Yeah.
And, they all have, communities have different expressions relating to.
Yeah, slang.
Yeah. Anyway.
But
so
anyway.
I have to refrain from a lot of that stuff because I know what it is,
Yeah.
But not to offend anybody, so I just keep it to myself. My thought is, it's not like that, But that mindset's in my own mind.
Yeah.
And so I try to incorporate things like there's a word I was teaching the kids. It's called "wah" and "cho," like that. Wah is kind of like enlightenment, and then "cho" means awesome.
Real good.
So you see some "wah," "cho," hello,
Oh, hello.
So I teach that to my students and have them practice saying it. So occasionally I hear one of the kids, they see me, "wah, cho."
Oh, I had you too. Okay. Well, in closing here, Toshka, I just wanted to help us all understand that as we do these things, we're just throwing out their food for thought. People can think about these things because again, we're concerned about now, one of the things we really, and I'm glad we're doing I mentioned this the other day in a discussion I was having with some of the folks here. I'm glad we're doing this because the next thing that they're concerned about is the mental health of the people that experience the COVID-19. And what they're calling is COVID-19 anxiety, eh? And it's going to make them anxious. But what we did based on this talking circle we had on Fridays, and of course, this little podcast, it helps people connect to some degree, not fully like we're used to, but at least we can still communicate, express ourselves in whatever way, and we give them food for thought to help them overcome the mental health aspect of what they're referring to as COVID-19 anxiety, eh?
Yeah.
And so they say, yeah. And so as we do these things, the effect that we're having on others to help them understand that that diversity is being represented based on the uniqueness of our protocol should be an enhancement, enrichment for the sake of the growth of our children, in which we're wishing to accomplish. And then as we chasha and Wiampi, the ones that want to become Wonspikia, then they need to understand that it's nothing wrong with sharing as opposed to telling. Eh? And so kind of like that. This is kind of an example, and it helps to deal with these things. So
remember you shared with us that story about your grandma hired those guys to dig a toilet?
oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I turned around and I ran into one of my friends. I told him that in Lakota. Easy thought that was funny. Yeah, that's real, man. That's the way they were.
That's way back in the day when you used to have to dig toilet holes. Eh?
Anyway, yeah, I see things on the internet, and one of them was this teacher. She was a new teacher. She came in her classroom, and kids were all sitting at their desks, and she started talking to them about, don't ever let anyone make you feel that you're stupid. She said, and so if you have any concerns and like, always stand up for yourself. Don't let anybody make you feel like you're stupid. You stand up for yourself. I said, anybody have any questions or concerns? And nobody said nothing for a long time. And this little boy raised his hand and he stood up. And she said, why are you standing up? You have something to say? Teacher, he said, I stood up because you're the only one standing here. I thought I'll join you.
I don't want you to be stupid alone.
That was a good one.
Okay, well, next up, Coach Scott.
Mitakepi. Just a few announcements before we close it up here. Because of Dexy Earl, Dexy Tommy, and the podcast, this message that we're getting it out there at not just a local or regional, but really kind of almost international relatives in Canada. There's a nice little following, so that makes me feel really good that what we're doing here is we're getting the message out. And so on Wednesday, July 21st, I believe that's a Wednesday, the American Indian College Fund invited the Buffalo Chasers podcast crew to do a presentation for about half an hour to some students that are all across AHEC, the American Indian Higher Education Consortium, which are basically tribal college students, to really to get our word out. And so I want to give the students that are on the webinar the heads up. So that flyer will be coming out. So that's really cool. There's other people like, I believe his name is Superman. He's from down in Crow Agency. Yeah. And there's another presenter. And so we'll be with that crew. So that's a pretty cool thing. Also, the first week in August, we're going to be doing a quilling workshop hosted by Fort Peck Community College, but it'll be facilitated by Laverne White Bear. She'll be
Gummy
skills. Yeah, Gummy's going to be back up here in Fort Peck and showing how to do that. So be on the lookout for that. Then also, I believe the second week in August, we'll be doing drum making workshop facilitated by Dexy Earl. So just a heads up, we'll get some flyers out. People can register up. But those are some of the cool things that are going to be unfolding later on this summer, and along with some other things. So just follow us on Facebook. We do have housing available if you're interested, but we'll share some more announcements. But I did want to get the word out there on those two topics. So again, mitakepi doksta ke wachiaka pikte apeti washte hapo.
Doksha ke chia.
Oh.
Hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya hey ha ya hey Fort Peck Community College, me too, gashi dagush kashka yogi no yo wata pevi agik tabi ihachi ya bino hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey yo hey yo hey ha, hey ha, yo, hey yo, hey yo, hey ha, ya, hey ha, hey ha, ya, hey ha, ya, hey ha, ya, hey ha, yo, hey yo, hey yo. Fort Beck Community College, Ungiebino, yo, yo, me too, gashi, dagush, kashka, yogi, piano, yo, yo, wata, pebi, hagik, tabi, ihachi, ya, bino, hey.